Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Onion Soup, the show where we pull back the layers of metaphysics and reality in order to demystify spirituality. Today, we have author of the book Love Awakens You, where Miss Cindy talks about the dichotomy between love and fear. How are you doing today, Miss Cindy?
I'm good. How are you, Dexter? Thank you for having me on the show.
Doing wonderful, and I'm happy to have you here. But let's just dive right into it. I definitely want to start off with your book. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
I can. My book is about recognizing and understanding the difference between love and fear
Hmm.
because fear is very pervasive in our lives and we don't know how pervasive it is. It's the simple things. You make a judgment about somebody, that's fear. If you think you're an individual, that's fear. So there's all kinds of different ways that fear moves in our lives that we're not aware of. Now,
Interesting.
this book is written. You do no journaling, no self help techniques, and no affirmations. All you do is read the book. That's
Huh.
it.
So, what do you mean by if you think you're an individual, that's an aspect of fear?
Well, because we are all connected, we are one, we're here to help everybody else, but mostly everyone just thinks of themselves. And if you're only thinking of yourself and not thinking of the whole, then you're in fear.
Oh, okay. My first thought was uh, like how people lean very into their ego and don't know how to separate themselves or believe that there's a disconnection between others. I was like, okay, I wonder if that's what she meant by.
I do mean that as well. Yes, it is the same thing, basically.
Okay, cool. So, what does that have to do with love? So, are you saying that fear and love are kind of on the same spectrum? What are you saying about that?
What I'm saying is human beings are basically only capable of two emotions:
Hmm.
love or fear, not
Okay.
both. Can't have both. One or the other. That's your choice. Um, if and 99% of the time we're all in fear.
Interesting. Why do you think that is?
I think because Earth is a world of duality. We're here to learn lessons. And as a result, because we're here to learn lessons, mostly we're here to learn how to undo fear. How do we get rid of ego and become an all encompassing love being?
So with Earth being a like a school, you said we're here to learn lessons. So if it's like a school, does that mean that there are different levels to the school? Or there are different classes, different grades?
Absolutely. There are all of that is true. Love is shown by compassion, kindness, integrity, honorability. These are love,
Mm.
right? Everything else is fear.
Hmm.
If someone makes a judgment, for example, they think I look old because of my gray hair.
Hmm.
That's fear.
Interesting. Interesting. So
Yeah.
any judgment or any idea that you place upon another individual based off your own perception, that is what you would consider to be fear based?
Hmm.
That's fascinating. So, what about the other emotions? If you say that the only two real emotions are fear and love, does it mean the other emotions just exist on that time, on that plane?
Oh, they all exist. It's just they're all fear. We've just given it a lot of different names: competition, individuality, anger. Um, can't think of any right off the top of my head, and I have like a bazillion I've written. This is so bizarre. Boop, blank. Uh, sorry, I get a little animated.
No,
Uh,
it's perfectly fine. You talk about the dichotomy between the two, and I agree that there tends to be a polarization between a lot of ideas and just in our society and in our world and our reality. So it does make sense to me to say that on the one hand we have fear, and the other hand we have love, and everything else is just kind of a byproduct of those two emotions, right?
yeah, basically. Hmm.
So
Yeah,
individuals who experience maybe sadness, grief, shame, those would kind of fall, you would say, more into the fear side?
those are all fair.
Yeah. And then the other side being, happiness, joy, though in love, all that is in the love side, right?
Yes.
So would you say that that has a lot to do or any similarities between the concept of yin and yang, the polarization or the dichotomy between light, dark, good, evil, yin yang? Do all of those kind of tie into it as well?
Well, love is one and fear is the other. Two choices. Yin and yang is two choices. Hot, cold, two choices. Light, dark, two choices. There's only two choices.
Interesting. So what brought you to this conclusion?
I became a student of A Course in Miracles
Mm,
a number of years ago. And I, well, what ended up happening was I read A Disappearance of the Universe and then said, oh, I have to get A Course in Miracles. So I read Disappearance of the Universe, A Course in Miracles, and did the workbook and A Course in Miracles all at the same time. I wouldn't recommend it. Your ego will get challenged like there's no tomorrow. Really, you're just going to get really challenged. And what happened while that was happening, I was getting inspirational sayings. They just were coming, coming, coming. And this happened for about 2 years. I mean, I had napkins. I'd be in a restaurant and I'd say, oh,
mhm.
got one. And I'd have to find a way to write it down, you know? Um, and that happened about 18 years ago. And about a year ago, I decided I should do something with all what I wrote because it
Mhm.
might be helpful for someone. So I did. I wrote it all down into a book. And then the book got expanded, and you know how that works,
That's
grows.
pretty cool, honestly, to think that your book is really a compilation of the ideas that you intuitively gathered just over the years.
Yeah, basically, the book is based on universal truths.
Mm.
Not everyone will be ready to hear those universal truths. Not everyone wants help, but it's available for people who want it.
What are the universal truths?
There is only love, there is no fear.
Mm,
And then
interesting.
the inspirational sayings, like, I'll give you an example. Our greatest growth comes from facing our greatest fears.
Mhm,
Something simple like that. You are the light of the world. And the
mm,
way there's 100 inspirational sayings, you read a page or two a day, and then there's more in-depth inspirational sayings. Then there's what I call answers,
mhm,
some meditations, and some reflections. Once you finish that book, slowly, of course,
mhm,
you actually start to open up to your intuition and to your higher guidance, and you then be able to connect
mm,
to whatever you want to call your higher guidance. You can call it many different things. God, Holy Spirit, higher self, whatever name anybody likes, it doesn't matter, just as long as they recognize there's a power greater than themselves.
mm. So you're saying that your book isn't necessarily meant to be read as in like one sitting, but it's meant to be kind of read piece by piece and then reflected upon?
Yes, because what happens is it's taken us eons to
Mhm,
get into fear. We
yeah,
aren't going to reverse that overnight to get into love. We will, for moments of time, do kindness or compassion, something nice that reflects love, but not to be able to maintain it all the
mm,
time.
interesting. So you mentioned about a higher power, and it really doesn't matter what name or title you give said higher power. But Uh, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you were around 16, that's when all of this started to happen.
Yeah.
And you mentioned how you started spending more time with Jesus and angels. Can you tell us more about that experience?
Well, I got grounded when I was 16. I was sassy. I got fired from a job for being sassy. And I got grounded for the summer of my 16th year when kids should be out. I spent it in my bedroom the whole time. I didn't realize and I had on this oval picture of Jesus. It had the bark still on the edge of it. And I didn't realize I'd just been spending so much time with Jesus and the angels that I didn't know what I was doing. It was just natural for me to recognize that.
Hmm. So, how did that experience lead you to attaining or realizing your intuitive and psychic abilities?
I just have always had them. When I was a kid, like 10 years old, I can remember my mother's friends coming to me and asking me a question and answering it. I didn't know 10-year-olds weren't supposed to answer adults with questions.
Hmm.
I just did it. They asked me a question, I gave an answer, and it was always based on intuition. I didn't always know. I just was answering what I got.
Would you say that children tend to be more intuitively connected to the universe, and that's why they tend to have that ability to do things like that?
I think children tend to have the intuition. I think society knocks it out of them.
Right. And that comes probably from the fear based, right?
Oh, yeah, because people don't like different.
Hmm. Why does it, I mean, it seems like that tends to happen more so in the Western culture and Western society as opposed to the Eastern cultures and Eastern societies. So, is there any thoughts on why it tends to happen more in our country?
I think our country is more industrialized. We're really driven by money.
Mm.
And in order to have money and things, you have to, fit a mold to be able to go out and do that. I think in the Eastern culture, they put a lot of, well, they're very, industrial as well. They put a lot of emphasis on their happiness by their spiritual beliefs.
Yeah, I would agree. It seems that just like there's the dichotomy between darkness and light and fear and love, it seems that the Western culture is more uh, grounded and into the materialism, and the Eastern culture seems to be more into spirituality. And not saying that there isn't an intermix of each of those and both of those sides, but just one seems more spiritual and one seems more material. Not saying that there's
Oh,
one
I
is
think
worse.
that's true. Yeah.
So, as you start to grow more into your intuition, at what point did you realize that this was a gift that you need to share with others?
Well, it's not one that I've easily volunteered to share. Let's put it that way. I'm quite happy being a hermit, I am. But you know what? I can help people. So, in order to help people, I have to get out more and speak more and socialize more, although I like not to, but that's not going to happen. I love talking about it, so I love sharing it. I mean,
Mm.
I'm going to tell you a little something that might help you understand. For the past 25 years, I have had stage 4 cancer.
Oh,
I still have stage 4 cancer.
hmm,
I most likely will always have stage 4 cancer, this type of cancer. Who knows? And why not share that? While my life is inspirational and helpful and hopeful, I wanted to do something more to help people help themselves. And that's what the book is about.
interesting. Is perhaps having cancer, is that something you think helped push you towards being more spoken about it, being that you're going through trauma and you're going through a healing process?
Well, I'd rather not talk about it because I don't look sick. I don't feel sick. But I don't like to tell people, although I'm telling people now, but I don't like to tell people because you get what I call the look. It's like, oh my God, she's going to die. And don't get me wrong, I had that when I first got the diagnosis. What do? I'm going to die. Guess
Mm.
what my God said? Live your life. Okay, I'm living my life.
So my father used to be I call him the all-American hero. He was a fireman, paramedic, Marine, police officer. And he would talk about how he would encounter people whom were given terminal diagnoses. So one story that comes to mind is he was talking about this gentleman who did get a diagnosis of cancer, never looked sick, never really felt sick. It was just something that the doctors found. It wasn't until he got the diagnosis and he started researching it and started talking to people about it that he started to feel sick. So it seems to me that one, obviously, our minds are extremely powerful, but as he started getting himself into this rut of the idea of what this is, then that's what made him sick. And the other side of that is he stopped. He stopped talking about it, and he stopped letting this identify him or define him. And instantly his health went right back up. And I just find it very fascinating because I agree with you. When you tell people about these things, you get exactly what you said, the look. And it's like, what does that mean? What does it mean to look sick? What does it mean to be sick? Because from my perspective, I think that a lot of us are ill just in different ways. Because you have people who constantly consume poison, such as like alcohol and other drugs, and that's just as detrimental. But we don't give them that same look or whatever because it's so deeply ingrained into our society, you know?
It's true. It's all true. Yeah, it's funny because um, I don't want to be sick, so I'm not.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But on that note, we're gonna take a really quick commercial break, and I'll see you in a moment. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. So, before we left, we were talking about health ultimately. So, I know that you do a lot of crystal work, and you once mentioned holding or touching a cistrine crystal and it turned into a liquid. Tell us about
Yes, it's true.
that. Yeah, what happened there? What was that experience like?
Well, I had gone to see a psychic in Santa Fe, who, by the way, is still practicing.
Mm,
And at the end of the session, she had a large feather, and under the feather was this citrine crystal. And I picked it up and I looked at it, and the whole thing turned to liquid. It was just moving up and down. And I
mm,
thought, I can't do this right now. Not now. It was my first thought. And then 6 weeks later, I called her for a session, and she, at the end of the session, said, "Is there anything I can do for you?" And I said, "Yes,
mm,
you have this crystal." And she said, "It's yours." A year earlier, the crystal told her it no longer belonged to her and it needed to be buried. So she
mm,
buried it, and she had just dug it up but didn't know who it belonged to. But because I asked, um, that's what, so she gave it to me, and that was my very first crystal. I have a very large collection since then, but it sits on my, the crystal has since broken. It's two different distinct pieces, and I didn't know that crystals were going to become a part of my life and that I was going to do crystal healings. I took some classes. I didn't really like the way they taught the classes, so I, come up kind of with my own way of using crystals.
mm. So, can you tell us more about crystal healing? I've always found the idea of crystals to be very fascinating. So, what is crystal healings and how does it work?
Okay, crystal healings. Now, there are three things that people use to remind themselves of something greater than themselves. One is birds, one is flowers, the other is crystals. Not as well known, not as popular, but crystals carry the vibration,
Mhm,
uh, frequency, sound, and color. They carry all four of the things. And depending on what the person's energy, what they need, I've created a thing. The first, you come once a month. The first three sessions, you
mm,
come for balancing. Everybody needs balancing. All the chakras need, and everything else, the arms and the legs, all gets cleared out, balanced. We raise your vibration. The last three is basic. Sometimes the fourth one is balancing still. And then the last three, what the crystals do is I build grids and I send the energy to you depending on what you need. Maybe you need something emotional cleared out. Maybe you need something mental. Maybe you need to get your all throughout all this, all the vibrations to get raised, and we bring you up to the fifth dimension.
wow. So, when you are starting to work with a new client or a new person, how do you determine which crystals to use first?
I can read auras and I look at their energy fields.
Oh, interesting. How do you read someone's aura and energy field?
I don't know how to answer that, to be honest. It's just so natural to me. You use your third eye
Mhm.
or your knowing. Sometimes you can hear, and some people like to use their solar plexus. My goal is never to use that as an empath. I don't. I really get tired of feeling everybody else's stuff, so I try not to do that. But it's like looking through the chakras. You look at the colors. You look. Are they spinning correctly?
Mhm.
Are they spinning in the right direction? Sometimes they're not. We also have the chakras are in the back as well, and you want to make sure that the back is open and they're at equal distance. You
Mhm.
want to make sure the aura isn't too big and has all of the seven colors or more, although more are coming in now at this time.
Mhm.
Sometimes there's more than we have seven basic chakras lately. A lot of people have an eighth one coming. And I just got to make sure everything's only can we remove or take away what you're ready to get rid of. If you're not ready to get rid of it, can't go. Because basically, I'm just the facilitator. I'm
Right.
not the actual healer. I am the facilitator.
Right. Can you see my chakra or my energies?
I can.
Can you describe it?
Your crown chakra is quite large.
Hmm.
Your root chakra is it's pretty good. Um, I think your root chakra needs to be, it's good color, by the way, great red, but it needs to be a little bit bigger.
Hmm.
You need to be a little more grounded.
Hmm.
Don't worry, I have the same problem.
It's funny you say
I'm
that.
up there than I do down here, and I'm learning. I do qigong and tai chi, and I
Yeah.
walk to get myself grounded.
Do you ever use your qigong to balance the energy? So when I talk about chakra work and energy work with other people, I kind of place an emphasis on it's not necessarily about opening the chakras, whereas it's more about balancing the energy. Because a lot of times what tends to happen is that we have some chakras that are more open than others, and some of them that need a little work, some of them are closed, not closed, but don't have as much energy flowing through them. So do you think that would be an accurate representation of kind of what's going on? The energy needs to flow a little bit better?
Absolutely. They all have to be, it's recommended that they all be around the same size,
Mhm.
flowing, the energy moving. The back needs to be open. People forget about the back. I sometimes I come in some people's backs are completely closed. Everything's in the front. That's great, but you still got to do the back. It just varies. Each person is different.
Do you ever use pendulums when you do your crystal work?
Never.
No, why not?
I tried using a pendulum and I would hold the pendulum and I'd go, well, let's see. Can we make the pendulum go right? Yes. Can we make the pendulum go left? Can I make it go in a circle? I could just move it the way I wanted to. I never was very good at letting it flow through because I've just got a fairly strong connection. So it didn't really work for me, but it works for a lot of people. The problem with the is you tend to use your body more than your mind
Yeah,
with the pendulum, and I'm more mind orientated than the body.
interesting. And I really like that. I think that a lot of times people get wrapped up in some of the tools that they use for their intuition or for the divination or whatever practices that they have, when a lot of it truly does come from the higher dimensions, higher planes, and we should be using less tools and more of our own intuitions.
It's true. That was one of the reasons why when I took the crystal class, they would use a ton of crystals on a person. So
Mhm.
much so sometimes they would, really start to go into shock.
Oh,
And I don't do things that way. That's why it's only 6 sessions. You come once a month, and it's slow progression.
mm,
Because if you do the Big Bang thing, it doesn't last anyways.
yeah.
You go slow and easy, and guess what? It'll last longer, and it can become more permanent.
Interesting. Do you ever recommend people who do things like this, like wear crystals and they carry crystals around their bodies? What are your thoughts upon that?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't happen to do it because I want to be as clear as I can.
Hmm.
So I don't do it, although I certainly have made, I make healing necklaces with
Mm,
grade AAA beads, almost gem quality beads, so that you can saturate your aura with whatever the necklace is. And by doing that, it gives you a healing as well.
Oh, wow. Well, it's been wonderful talking to you. It's pretty much all the time that we have, but I definitely want to have you back on and talk more about crystals, and perhaps if we can get some type of demonstration, that would be wonderful.
Great. I have this. Sure, I'd love to. I have what I call a little starter kit of 4 crystals that I recommend people to do, and I can tell you how to use it and things like that. And I have samples that I have.
Oh, wow, yeah, I love that. Yeah, we're definitely gonna have to have you back. Thank you so much for coming on, Miss Cindy, and it's been wonderful talking with you.
Thank you, Dexter. I've enjoyed it very much.
Also, thank you everyone for listening. Bye.